So we're going to look at what is a rodenticide. We're going to look at LD50, then a brief history of the rodenticides that we have, modern target rodents, the actual modern rodenticides in use, anticoagulants, and then we're going to go through first gen, second gen, non-anticoagulants, cholecalciferol, alpha-chloralose. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about a new product that's under registration that should be coming very soon, and then we're going to take some questions. So, what is a rodenticide? So usually when I present this, I'm presenting it in a room and I'll ask the room, what's a rodenticide? And then I get various different answers and generally take the mickey out of people. So I'm not going to be able to do that today. So we're going to look at the definition of what is a rodenticide. So basically, rodenticides are chemicals, pesticides that are made, sold, and used to control rodents. So rodenticides need to be ingested, so they need to be eaten by the rodent, and that can be done directly in a bait format or indirectly like a contact preparation. They have different modes of action, again, which will depend on the active ingredient that that rodenticide contains. And when we're looking at them, we can class them as chronic, subacute, or acute, which depends on how quickly their ingestion results in the death of that target rodent. So chronic would be quite slow acting, subacute is then somewhere in the middle, and acute is a very fast acting rodenticide. So we see lethal dose 50 or LD50 a lot. It's on sort of your MSDS sheets, and we talk about it a lot when we're training and talking about how different things kill. We look at an LD50 value. So it's a scientific measure of toxicity, and it's the amount of milligram of the active substance, so milligrams of the active ingredient per kilogram of the test subject population to kill 50% of that. And the way an LD value works is the lower the value, the more toxic the substance. So if you're doing a cost assessment and you've decided you're using a rodenticide, you need to use it. We then have to look, can we use something that is less toxic, but will still get the same results? So if we're looking at that, we look at our LD50 values and we look at something with a higher value because that is the less acutely toxic. So we now crack on with the brief history of modern rodenticides. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm pretty much obsessed with not just pest control and how things work, but I also love my history, especially the Victorians. Victorian era was when we sort of, a lot of the modern things that we now have started to come into fruition. So it's been sort of a battle immoral between us and rodents. So it's been going on since time began, basically. So in Victorian times, the rat catcher was well regarded. So you can see this lovely picture of this gentleman. This gentleman here is called Jack Black, and he was the royal appointed rat catcher for the City of London. And he's the sort of forefather of modern pest control. So he was quite an entrepreneurial rat catcher, was our Jack. So he used to mainly live capture and use his dogs at the start of his career. And if he live caught something that had interesting fur or patterns, he then used to sell those to rich people as pets because they were exotic. So he's quite entrepreneurial that way. But things started to change with the Industrial Revolution. So what happened with the Industrial Revolution? Iron smelting became a massive thing. And a byproduct of the iron smelting process was arsenic. And arsenic had a lot of uses and was widely available. You could pop into your local apothecary, which was like going to Boots, it was like going to your chemist or any other chemist brand, and it could be bought by anybody. So arsenic, Jack started mixing food with arsenic to kill rats, which is basically our first use of a rodenticide. So this was quite sort of revolutionary. The problem with arsenic was it was easily available. It came in bags. It looked quite like flour, and people misused it generally to kill their spouses and their landlords and people they didn't like. And then there were also accidental poisonings where people, if they weren't that literate, would use arsenic instead of flour and accidentally poison everybody. So the main thing we're going to start looking at is our target rodents. So we had 3 target rodents. A couple of years ago, we got another one added to labels. So it started off, we had Mus musculus domesticus, our house mouse, very, very common, found in and around buildings. It's adapted. It's what we call a commensal rodent. So it lives in around us. It's adapted to exploit us and our behaviors. Fantastic, very inquisitive little rodent. And it's quite unique compared to other target rodents because it doesn't hoard or cache food. It doesn't store food. It always lives in and around its food source. So on average, these are about 15 grams in weight. It's quite small, isn't it? They only need 3 grams of food a day, which is about 20% of their body weight. And they need 3 milliliters of water. But as long as their food has sufficient moisture content, they don't need to drink open water. But in dry situations, they only need 3 mil. As Sophie was saying earlier about how insects get into buildings, she did tell you that mice only needs a gap of more than 5 millimeters in circumference. So these guys, small gaps to exploit these cavities, these crawl spaces. They only need then 3 grams of food a day, quite easy to find in a house, especially if you've got little people, you'll get that in biscuit crumbs and sweets and bits dropped down sofas. And then 3 mil water requirement, condensation, water around a plug hole, quite easy for them to survive and do quite well in our buildings. We then had Apodemus sylvaticus. So crew always said to us, this was never a target rodent. If it moved in and around buildings, then we could deal with it with trapping. But then a couple of years ago, there was a label change and there's one product now, a cholecalciferol product, that has Apodemus sylvaticus on the label. So you can now treat for the wood mouse. Then our public enemy number 1, Rattus norvegicus. So these guys, on average, about 300 grams. Large individual will be 500 grams. These eat 30 grams of food a day. And their Achilles heel is their need for water. So they need 60 milliliters of water a day. Very, very clever animal, very habitual in its habits. And they obviously exhibit neophobia. We can get bait shyness, and they're a very intelligent animal. They have trusted food sources. And this is going to be quite important with what I'm talking about in a minute. And then finally, we've got Rattus rattus, our black rat. So these guys, 150 mils on average, sorry, 150 grams on average, 300 grams for a large individual. They need 15 grams of food a day, 15 milliliters of water, and pretty similar to a house mouse. If the food is of moist content, so if they're eating fruit, then they do not need to drink open water. They will get their water content from their food. It's quite interesting for us with black rats because very few of us have ever treated them. So I've been doing this 28 years. I've treated 2 black rat infestations in my time, that's it. So they're quite scarce on our island. So when we look at modern rodenticides, so I've sort of put them into 3 categories. So we've got our first generation anticoagulants. So we've got warfarin, cumatetrol, and chlorofazanone. Then our second generation anticoagulants, which are bromadiolone, difenicum. These are what we call multi-feed anticoagulants. And then we've got flocumulafin, brodifacoum, and difafilon, which are our single feed anticoagulants. And then we've got our non-anticoagulants, which I've just put in cholecalciferol and alpha-chloralose. So these are sort of the 3 categories we're going to look at. So our anticoagulants. So the mode of action, how an anticoagulant works. So doesn't differ between our first generations or our second generations, or if they're single feed or if they're multi-feed. So the mode of action and what we tell our customers and everybody else is that anticoagulants disrupt the blood clotting process. They stop blood clotting and cause the animal through its day-to-day activities to basically die from internal bleeding. So they are chronic rodenticides. They're slow acting. It takes a number of days. We now have known resistance and documented resistance to some of these active ingredients. The antidote to their mode of action is a vitamin K1. So again, our anticoagulants need to be ingested directly or indirectly by the rodent. How they actually work is, yeah, they do affect basically the blood clotting process, but specifically they inhibit the enzyme vitamin K1 epoxy reductase, and this prevents the synthesis and absorption of that vitamin K1, which is needed for the blood clotting process. And this actually stops and blocks the blood clotting factors, which are 2, 7, 9, and 10. And that's why then, after a few days, we get the mortality of those target rodents when they've ingested a lethal dose. So the first anticoagulant we talk about is warfarin. So again, a lot of our first generations came in a few years or to around the end of the Second World War. So it came into general use in the UK in 1947. It's the first of our first generation anticoagulants. It disrupts the blood clotting process. And currently we have no products available in the UK market for warfarin anymore. So it's more of a historic thing now than a practical thing. And again, this is mainly because of resistance to it. And then of cumatetrol. Cumatetrol came into general use in the United Kingdom in 1957. It was first branded as supercumin. So it's a first generation anticoagulant. Again, same thing, same mode of action. It affects that vitamin K1 epoxy reductase, so it disrupts the blood clotting process. It's currently still available in the market in rat human foam. So it's your contact prep for rats. So I'm sure most of you are sort of know about that and probably use it because it is our only contact preparation for our rats. Good product. We've then got chlorofascinone, which came into use in 1961. First generation anticoagulant. Again, it's the same thing, disrupts the blood clotting process. No longer available in the PCO market. So when I first started doing my pest control almost 30 years ago now, when we were looking at external baiting, when we had infestation, we were using grain bait, we used a chlorofascinone product called DRAT, which was a really effective product back in the day. And one of my jobs on a Friday was to take the liquid DRAT and mix it with wheat in a cement mixer and then bag it up and have it ready for the next week's work. So from our first generations, we then transitioned to our second generation anticoagulants. So bromadiolone, which was first registered in the UK in 1978. So again, it's a multi-feed second generation anticoagulant. It disrupts that blood clotting process, and it's still widely used in our market today in the UK. There is some known resistance and pockets of resistance throughout the United Kingdom that are documented with this. It's also one of the only products that you can continuously bait with as long as you do your environmental risk assessments and you can justify it. We then also have difenicum. So difenicum was first registered and used in the UK in 1975. So it's actually a year older than me, so it turned 50 this year. Multi-feed second generation anticoagulant. Again, disrupts the blood clotting process. Widely used product. Again, it's another product that as long as we can justify it and use our environmental risk assessments that we can permanently bait with, However, again, as well, we're seeing resistance out there to difenycoum too now. We then hit our single feed second generation anticoagulants. So flocumulafin was first registered in the UK in 1984. It's widely used in agriculture, especially in Ireland. Farmers in Ireland love a certain bait that's made with flocumulafin. So it's a single feed second generation anticoagulant. It disrupts the blood clotting process. It's got, compared to the other anticoagulants, it's got a low LD50. So that means it's more bioaccumulative as well, and it will build up in the fatty tissues of anything that eats it, and it can easily then result in secondary poisoning transfer. Again, it's found in our market, it is out there. There are products with this active. We then come to brodifacoum. So brodifacoum was first registered in the UK in 1977. This is probably the most commonly used active ingredient in single feed anticoagulants. I'd say many of you out there are using brodifacoum. From that point of view, same thing, disrupts the blood clotting process, widely used. It's in a lot of products in the market. Very effective product. We then have diethylphylline. So diethylphylline first came on the market in 1986. It's again a single feed second generation anticoagulant. It was marketed as the resistance breaker when it came out because there is no resistance to it, or no known resistance to it. Again, it does the same thing. It's an anticoagulant, so it's disrupting that blood clotting process, working on that vitamin K1 epoxy reductase, stopping that from doing what it does, so stopping the blood clotting via that. So again, it's present in products in the market. And the interesting thing about diethylphylline, when we compare the LD50 values for single feed second generation anticoagulants, and if we're doing our COSH assessments and our risk assessments properly, and there's certain things in the environment, especially when we're looking at primary poisoning of non-targets and we're looking at our secondary poisoning, because this has got a higher LD50 value, this is then, when you have those situations, a preferable choice over your flocumulafin and your brodifacoum. So that's the anticoagulants done. We're now going to look at the non-anticoagulants. So I'm going to start with cholecalciferol. So this was first registered in the 1980s. Today's formulations first came in the market in 2020. So it's quite funny when we look at people, oh, these are new products. The two products that are out there on the market, the one that has apodemus on it, and the one that's mine that we can use in open areas and burrow baiting. But it's back to the future for me, because there's going to be older pest controllers like me out there who will remember when we actually had technical calciferol as a powder, like you did alpha-chloralose and mixed it. And then later on you had Cerexa CD, which was a difenicum cholecalciferol mix. So cholecalciferol isn't an anticoagulant. It works totally differently. It's actually vitamin D3. So what we do with it is that by using this as a bait, when the target rodent eats it, it literally overdoses. Once it gets a lethal dose, its body is overdosed with vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 then causes to pull the calcium out of the bones and puts more calcium into the bloodstream. This mode of action is called hypercalcification, and you get calcium buildup around the major organs. So it's usually the liver and kidneys that are hit first, and then the heart, and obviously that will cause death. But you also get calcification around the joints as well. So they're pretty much quite crispy once they've had this lethal dose. So it's a sub-acute rodenticide. So it's not chronic, it's not as slow acting, it's slightly quicker acting. There's no resistance to vitamin D3. So cholecalciferol, there's no resistance to it. So it doesn't matter if you're in an area that's got mapped resistance, you know this is going to work as long as you get bait take. There is no antidote to vitamin D3 or cholecalciferol once a lethal dose has been taken. There is a treatment which involves charcoal, but again, if you've had a lethal dose, you're pretty much, that's it for that. So cholecalciferol, not a new product by any stretch of the imagination, not a new active, sorry, but the new products, as I said, came into 2020. So the products themselves are reasonably new. We then have alpha-chloralose. So this, again, first came on the market in 1974. So it's a narcotizing agent. It actually affects the central nervous system and suppresses it. It causes death by hypothermia. It's an acute rodenticide. It's very, very quick acting. There's no resistance. Initially, when this was first on the market, we were told that temperatures above 18 degrees centigrade, it didn't work very well. The products that are out there now will kill up to 35 degrees C, so they will work in heat. It's small amounts because it's an acute rodenticide. It's acutely toxic. However, the labels are only for house mice indoors. It's not good against rats. And the reason for this is because it's so quick acting. House mice being small have a large surface area to volume ratio. So literally they take it, their nervous system starts to get suppressed. They actually will twitch and spin about a bit like when you spray a fly with a fly killer. And because they've lost control of the nervous system, they can't regulate their body temperature. And because they've got this surface area to volume ratio, so they've got this large surface area, they will lose heat very quickly and they go into hypothermic state and they die. But it is only against house mice, because the problem with rats being a bigger animal, rats will take a nibble, they will start to get sick, they'll stop eating, so they don't get a lethal dose, and they get bait shyness with it. So this is why, and I know at times alpha-chloralose has been looked at for rats, but it's never been formulated to work. So the new product that I'm talking about that we're going to hopefully launch at the moment, so this is Racumin Expert, and it is registration pending, so it's still going through the registration process for here in the UK. So it's going to be the first generation anticoagulant bait that we've had on the market in the UK for a few years. So we will finally again have a first generation bait, which just gives us another thing for our toolboxes. So interestingly about this, it's 27 parts per million. So it's 0.0027%, whereas before they were 0.04% or 0.0367% traditionally when we look at it. So it's a lot smaller parts per million. And the thing that I say when I'm talking and when I'm teaching and we're talking about active ingredients, is people go, oh, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. Active ingredients kill. It's the formulation that makes them work. So it's the formulation and the complexity and the attractiveness of the formulation that makes it work. So this has been years in the making. We've improved palatability. So it's got a very similar bait matrix to Harmonex and to Rodolon. It's efficient because at low parts per million, it still kills. It's got reduced environmental impact, again, because we're talking about first generation at low parts per million. So it's a lot less bioaccumulative than all the other anticoagulants out there on the market. And again, going back to the environmental impact, the packaging is modern and sustainable, and there's a lot less sort of plastic, less carbon footprint going into it. The areas of use, so we've got standard areas, so it's going to be inside and basically in and around buildings, what we say. So it's inside and outside around the buildings. So uniquely as well, we're looking at open areas, burrow baiting and waste sites. So as I said, at the moment, this is in registration, but this is what's proposed on the label And judging by the rest of Europe, so this is available in France, Benelux, and the Nordics, where they have these areas on the label. So hopefully this will give us another open area bait to go with Harmonix, which is at the moment the only rodent bait that we can use in open areas. Again, with the Rat Human Expert, this is just solely going to be for rat control. So it's going to have Rattus rattus and Rattus norvegicus on the label. So I got very excited by this because I've got a fantastic colleague, Dr. Stefan Enderpols, who does all the sort of formulations of the trials, and he shared the data with me from the field trial. So he does a field trial very similarly to how I did. So I got very excited by this. So the black lines here are what we call the census. So you use a non-toxic bait, you put it down on the Monday to the Friday, and you measure your bait take over the days. That gives you your initial bait take, or what we call the initial population. You then take the bait take up on the Friday, you leave the area without bait on the Saturday and Sunday, and we call that our lag. So you then have your lag one. After lag one, that Monday, you put down your toxic baits. And from that Monday to Friday, again, you measure your bait take. You take it up on the Friday. That gives you your lag two on the Saturday and Sunday. And then you have your, like they call it a tracing census, but we always used to call it a confirmation census. And this again, you put down your non-toxic bait and you measure your bait take over the 5-day period from Monday to Friday. And then your difference from the first census to the second census is your drop in population. And what this did, it proved that after 4 days, we pretty much got the 100% control proven. And the interesting thing about this was that it was done on the livestock farm at the edge of known resistance area. So there was a high probability of resistant rats in that area. So yeah, standard protocol at the moment with a medium infestation should easily gain control in 14 days of treatment. So it's passed the efficacy test. It's passed the 90% goal that's set for regulatory. So again, this is really, really promising that we will have another tool for our toolbox. So guys, that's me. I've probably been quite short and sweet. So have we got any questions?
Oh, camera's not working.
There
There we
you
go.
are. There you are, mate. You're right.
Good. Thank you for that, Rich. I just wanted to mention as well that Envu is sponsoring today's forum, so thank you again, Rich, for that.
No worries, mate.
Bit of a statement on this one rather than a question. So wood mice is on the label, but yellow neck mice isn't. It's important to know what you are dealing with, and I think that's mice
Oh
control
yeah,
in general, I
well, in
guess.
fairness, that's one that's a very, very good point. Secondly, it doesn't matter what rodenticide you are using, you should know what you're dealing with. And that's a big thing. We get people who we've got mice on our attic, so pest controllers will go up and put a standard rodenticide up, and it's wood mice. And we
Yeah,
know that because they then try and bury the bait like Stevie Wonder by putting a few bits of stick or a little bit of insulation over it, not hiding it properly. And in that case, then you need to remove all the bait very quickly. But really, should you have gone straight in with a standard bait?
yeah.
Um,
I remember going to a farm once, and I went up in the roof space, and they'd done a bit of DIY pest control. And there was just bags of rodenticide covered over everywhere. I thought this is a bit strange. Anyway, I started peeling back the insulation. It was obviously field mice that were in there.
yeah,
And same again. They were just hoarding it as we got through the loft. You could see where they were hoarding all
yeah,
this sort of grain bait. So identifying what you're dealing with first, using traps or
yeah.
then means rather than just jumping straight to rodenticides with mice control is obviously vitally important.
Yeah, totally. And again, traditionally, like you, like me, being quite old, John, um, we would never use rodenticide against wood mice because we had nothing we could use, and
Yeah,
you never thought of them as a pest until they became a health risk to people, which meant they were in or around that building posing a threat. So it's just, yeah, the addition to the label of that product, which isn't mine, by the way, um, added sort of a new caveat to it, didn't it really? Because
yeah,
that's it. But yeah, especially in southern England, we have Apodemus fluvicollis, we've got the yellow-necked wood mouse, And yeah, you cannot use it against that because it's not on the label.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Um, how best to overcome rodenticide shyness?
So, right, so we get this a lot. And the other thing that I think we generally don't do well as an industry in general is use non-toxic bait. So if I'm going to use a toxic bait, I will use the non-toxic sister product first. Firstly, as well, if you've got rodents in an area and you're introducing something totally new, then if you, again, because you're going to have a neophobic period. So if you're going to have neophobia, what's the point in putting a toxic rodenticide down? One, because it's more expensive if you're looking as an owner. And two, if it's down and the rats aren't going to go near it for 7 to 10, 15 days, non-targets will, especially mice because they're inquisitive. So
Yeah, if it's being
your
left
wood mice, your
alone.
females will go into them and and that way. So you're better one putting your non-toxic down first. Once you start to get bait take, you then swap to the sister toxic product. It's seamless. They're already feeding. You'll get quick uptake, quick kill, and you can be more targeted because out of your 30 bait points, it might be only 7 that are the issue. So
Yeah.
instead of having 30 lots of tox down, you've got 7. So big thing to overcome the bait shyness is using the non-toxic first, getting them habituated to that bait matrix. And then it also comes down to your environmental management as well, doesn't it? And getting rid of those other food sources, restricting their food sources, making it the fact that they then have to change their preference.
Yeah, if you've got an issue with a site with bait shyness, it can be quite difficult to
Yeah,
you've got to go to them extra steps, as it were, to try and overcome the problem.
yeah.
Um,
If we're looking at rats, then the other option is that bait shyness is definitely a thing, but as soon as you burrow bait, they are not shy at all because it's in their burrow. They're quite comfy and they just look at it as a Christmas present, don't they? Um, take your pesticide to your pest.
so there's a couple of questions on this. Recruitment expert, is it cumatetranol?
It's coumatetrol, yeah,
Just anything else is in there.
2.7%. Sorry, it's 27 parts per million, not 2.7%. That'd be well high.
There's a bit on resistance. So
Yeah.
with rice pest resistance to F-gas, given the use in open areas, uh, it's replacing 2 S-gas recently lost. So it's given an option for open use products, I
So
guess.
so again, it's giving another tool to the toolbox. And again, if you're doing your environmental risk assessment and you're looking at it and there's non-targets and you need to do something or you've got a risk of companion animals, it's giving you another option to target that area.
How will it be packaged? Will it be like a tea bag or
So it will be as a pasta, so it'll be like
okay,
Harmonix or Rodolon. It's going to be the same thing. It's the same bait matrix, so it can be used as well with Harmonix monitoring paste. So again, for habituation, brilliant because you can get that non-toxic down first, get them feeding, and then target your rodenticide use. So you're losing using less.
yeah. Is it fairly stable then with it being used in open areas? Like it's not going to be affected by moisture as as much as
So
maybe?
again, there's lots of studies on this, and the fact that it's got a bio layer, the actual bag itself will discolor, but that's not going to put, again, especially a common rat off, because as you will have known, when you find a cache of food, what's it covered in? It's covered in mold, and they've cached it and stored it, and they will eat it. So yeah, no, it's not. It's not going to be an issue.
No. Perfect. I think that's all the questions I had for you, Richard. Yep.
Excellent,
No
mate.
more. Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much, my friend.
No
I'll
worries.
see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Look after yourself. Bye,
And you.
everybody.